What if I told you that a billionaire CEO once walked into a cafe pretending to be broke, carrying nothing but two little children who called him daddy? And what if I told you that on that very day, he wasn't just searching for love, but for someone who could love him when the world saw nothing but a struggling single father? Would you believe me if I said everything changed when she showed up, unknowingly stepping into the greatest blind date of her life? His name was Adrian Cross, a man the world knew as a ruthless, untouchable business mogul who turned companies into empires overnight. But behind the sharp suits, glossy headlines, and endless meetings, Adrian was something the tabloids never captured: a widowed father of two 6-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily. They were his heart, his anchor, and his reason to keep going after tragedy had nearly broken him. His wife, the love of his youth, had passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. Ever since, Adrian had been buried in work while struggling to be both mother and father to the twins, but loneliness crept in like a shadow. He wanted companionship, not the kind attracted to his money, his status, or his fame. He wanted someone who would see him as just Adrian. A man who sometimes forgot to pack lunch for the kids, who had messy hair in the mornings, who loved bedtime stories and burnt pancakes. But how could he ever find that when everyone only wanted the billionaire CEO? That's when his best friend and business partner, Marcus, stepped in with an idea. "Let me set you up on a blind date. But don't go as Adrian Cross, the CEO. Go as Adrian, the single dad who works odd jobs. If she stays after seeing your world stripped of power, you'll know she's real." Adrian hesitated. Deception wasn't in his nature. But he also knew his wealth was a cage. So, he agreed. He traded his designer suit for a worn jacket, parked his luxury car in a hidden garage, and borrowed Marcus's old beat-up sedan. Then, on a crisp Saturday morning, he walked into a cozy neighborhood cafe with Ethan and Emily trailing behind, both clutching his hands tightly, and that's when she entered. Her name was Clara Hayes, a kindergarten teacher with a soft smile and eyes that held stories of their own. She had no idea who Adrian really was. All she knew was that her friend had set her up on a blind date with a hard-working single dad who needed a break. The first moments were awkward. Clara sat across from Adrian at the wooden table, the twins between them, fidgeting with crayons the cafe had offered. Adrian stumbled through small talk, worried his disguise would crack. But then, Clara leaned forward, asked Ethan what his favorite subject in school was, and laughed when Emily proudly showed her a messy drawing of a unicorn. Something shifted. For the first time in years, Adrian felt at ease. Clara wasn't looking past him, waiting for something grander. She was there, present, listening. She wasn't impressed by money because she thought he had none. She was impressed by his devotion to his children, by the way his eyes softened when they tugged on his sleeve, by the exhaustion he carried but never complained about. But the test wasn't over. Challenges rose quickly. Adrian had told Clara he worked odd jobs to get by, so when the twins suddenly asked if they could go to the amusement park the next day, Adrian froze. He wasn't supposed to afford it. Clara noticed his hesitation, and instead of judging, she smiled and said, "Why don't we pack sandwiches and go to the park nearby? Sometimes the best memories don't cost a thing." Adrian's chest tightened. He had taken countless women to expensive resorts, luxury dinners, and gala events in the past, yet none of those moments compared to the picnic Clara planned. She ran with the twins across the grass, played tag until she was breathless, and when Adrian finally sat beside her watching the kids, she whispered, "You're doing an incredible job." But the lie weighed heavily. With every day, Adrian fell deeper for Clara, and the guilt of his hidden identity grew sharper. He had promised himself he'd tell her soon, but fear held him back. What if she left when she discovered the truth? What if she thought the entire connection was built on manipulation? The breaking point came one evening when Adrian invited Clara to his modest apartment, the one he had borrowed from Marcus to keep up his disguise. The twins had fallen asleep on the couch, their tiny heads resting on Clara's lap as she read them a bedtime story. Adrian watched the scene with tears threatening to fall. He couldn't do it anymore. "Clara," he whispered, his voice trembling. "There's something I haven't told you. Something important." Her eyes lifted to his, calm and curious. He confessed everything: the deception, the truth about who he really was, the empire he secretly owned. Clara's face went pale. Silence stretched between them like a canyon. You lied, she finally said, her voice breaking. Yes, Adrian admitted. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I need you to understand, I wasn't testing you as much as I was protecting myself. Everyone wants the CEO, but I needed to know if someone could love Adrian, the father, the man. Not the millionaire. Clara rose slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't care about money. I care about honesty. And you broke that. For days, Clara pulled away. Adrian respected her space, though the twins asked constantly when they'd see Miss Clara again. His heart ached, and he wondered if he had destroyed the only chance he had at true happiness, but then, a letter came. Clara had written it after sorting through her emotions. In it, she explained that though she was hurt, she couldn't deny what she had seen in Adrian's heart and in the bond he shared with his children. She wasn't in love with the CEO. She was in love with the man who burned pancakes, told silly bedtime stories, and looked at his kids as if they were his whole world. When she showed up at his real home, a sprawling mansion, Adrian braced for her judgment. Instead, Clara smiled softly and said, "The house doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. What matters is that when Ethan draws unicorns and Emily asks 1,000 questions, you light up. That's the man I fell for." From that moment, everything changed. Adrian no longer needed to hide. Clara became part of their world, not because of what he owned, but because of who he was, and as their love grew, Adrian learned the most valuable lesson of all: wealth can build empires, but only love can build a home. This is the story of how a billionaire CEO, disguised as a broke single dad, found love not in riches or power, but in the quiet truth of being seen. It's a reminder that sometimes, the richest man in the room isn't the one with the largest bank account, it's the one whose children run into his arms and whose partner sees his soul.